As of now, there is a word from the Lord that I want to share with you all. Because of where we are spiritually, where we are socially, and where we are as a nation, a world, and the time where we are. As we praise God, as we shout, as we dance, as we do our religious rhetoric in here, there is a world that is on fire, no secret. And there is a time that is on fire. And I want to talk to you all because where we are. This Friday, for those who don't know, is a holiday, a day that is called Juneteenth. The 19th of June. And this day is designated as the Liberation Day fully for African Americans in this country. Most people don't know. Some people are coming into full understanding of it. But for years and decades, this country has denied the reality that this country has two Liberation Days. Many people celebrate the 4th of July, saying that's the day that this country had freedom. But on the 4th of July, while a nation was celebrating their liberation from a monarchy and a governmental oppression, they themselves were doing the oppressing and created a monarchy themselves over African Americans. At that time, black people was considered 3/5 of a person, not even a whole human being. And then they had the nerve to decide to say, you know what? We're going to create the 3/5 compromise. The most disgusting thing about it is what is it that you have to compromise about regarding somebody's humanity? So on this Friday is Juneteenth, and a lot of churches and a lot of people now are becoming more socially conscious than they ever been before, which I am glad. This is that great awakening and that paradigm shift. This is that reformation of God's people in church that we are now looking for. So as we celebrate Juneteenth, the week of Juneteenth, what do you have to say, preacher? Well, I have to tell America something. And it's simply put your money where your mouth is. The reason why, as we look at this great emancipation of people, June 19th, 1865 is something that we must consider. Because if you look at this, it was literally 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. So here it is, January 1st, 1863 became official that slaves were free. But not all states adhered or agreed to that. So purposely, particularly the state of Texas, withheld that information from its slaves. So from 2.5 years, they began to get free more labor and oppression. And it took a Union General, Gordon Granger, rode into Galveston, Texas, and announced that the enslaved people were now free on June 19th, which is now considered Juneteenth. This day is considered a day that many African Americans celebrate liberation from the oppression of being enslaved. There's many celebrations. You got festivals and barbecues, and many people traditionally eat red fruit and food, strawberries, watermelon, because it represented the blood that was shed from our predecessors, right? So this is stuff that we see in our culture that many people may stereotype us about. And you've seen over time how they try to mock us with our culture and the foods we eat and the dances we have. And our children don't know about this. I said it 2 weeks ago. It's a shame that this educational system force our black kids to learn more about the Holocaust than they do about the slave trade and all of the years of oppression that black people went through. That is not a knock towards the Semitic culture and the Jews. That's not a knock towards them. But the reality is, how many Jewish children are forced to learn about the transatlantic slave trade? Think about it. In their schools, unless we equal the playing field, if you want to make me learn about the Holocaust and the signs of Hitler, then you have to learn what the Confederate flag means to us. Because the same way you have a symbol that represents your oppression and your slavery, we have a symbol in our country that they still do not want to apologize for. As I give an introduction to this, I got to move swiftly. Is that our youth, our generations, we are forced to live in ignorance. So what can you say to a country? What can you say to a world, to our people? I come to say, America, put your money where your mouth is. Because since our enslavement in 1619 and I told you what God told Abraham about the children of Israel in Egypt about the 400 years, it is not about coincidence. That is in Genesis 15. He says that for 400 years that you shall be enslaved and oppressed. But after that 400 year, I will cause you to come out with great possession. This is literally the first year after 400 years that we have been in this country, from 1619 to 2019. So as we come into 2020, we are seeing the transformation, that shift. That now people have becoming more socially conscious and aware of their freedoms and their realities. Our people been through a lot. There's no need for me to go through the history. We know that. Through Jim Crow, segregation, mass incarceration, the infiltration of guns and drugs, all of these systemic oppressions that has been on the black community for years. Now, as you've seen in the last month, this country has literally been flipped on its head. Where now the poor and the oppressed is speaking. The powerful and the privileged has been prevailing long enough that the tables are now turning. The power and the elitists of this country, the grip is being released from their hands. And the only way this country can move forward is if we understand the economic justice that must take place for a designated people. Now, can I tell you that the poor will continue to tear up this country until they get one word: justice. At the end of the day, all of this is spewed towards the fact that injustice has taken place. And it is not just for 8 minutes and 46 seconds that this officer has put his knee on George Floyd's neck. We have had knees on our necks way longer than 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But that 8 minute and 46 seconds literally was a culmination and a summary and a highlight of how now we're tired of being your footstool. Since this country's inception, blacks have been on the bottom. Generations now have risen up and we're no longer tolerated. So now we're seeing a shift. But here's where I get the sermon. Give me 15 to 20 more minutes and I swear I'm done. This is quicker than what you think. Where I get this sermon is because all this week we've seen Congress take a knee in D.C. with kente cloths on. We've seen corporations say they stand in solidarity. We've seen the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, make videos about how Black Lives Matter, but not once mention Colin Kaepernick's name. Not once offer an apology to this man who you blackmailed and ostracized and kicked out of the league. Now you see what we're going through. We just seen last week Drew Brees, quarterback of New Orleans Saints, who I was a big fan of, make ignorant statements about the flag. Then he says after he talked to his teammates, now he learned about black oppression. You didn't learn that in 12 hours. You know the season is starting. You know that it can cost you a Super Bowl ring. My thing is for America, from D.C. to Springfield, to City Hall, to your block, put your money where your mouth is. Because it's easy to say you stand in solidarity with us. But if we don't see tangible proof, all right, I'm going to give it to you in Hebrews. I got Bible. Bible says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. That substance I taught y'all before in Greek means hypostasis. In Greek, substance means hypostasis. That's what that word says. You can Google it if you want to. Hypostasis says, I have tangible proof of an invisible reality. Which means that even though I'm believing, there's something tangible I'm doing to go towards how I believe. Come here, I got Bible. Y'all think I don't. Woman with the issue of blood. She had an invisible reality that she could be healed. But she did something tangible. She said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment. You got tangible proof of an invisible reality. America, church, where's your tangible proof? As we look at what's going on, because for those of y'all who didn't know, this police officer, I refuse to say his name, that killed George Floyd, don't you know that he's still eligible for his pension? Don't you know that he's eligible? The way he can receive around $50,000 or even more of annual payments, even if he's convicted. He's still eligible. Because he worked a certain amount of time, he's still eligible to get paid and take care of his family. When you got a 6-year-old girl that didn't even know her daddy died, but on the shoulders of Steve Jackson saying, my daddy changed the world. She don't have her daddy. But yet this monster, this demon still gets his money. I made a post this week, and here it is. I said to white America, the black people and other races who live in it, I said this with love and respect. Standing in solidarity with the black community is not good enough. Here it is, and I'm almost done preaching. When you're willing to give up your privilege, your money, and all of your opportunities and your lifestyle you gained at the expense of black people, then we can talk. Because making t-shirts and videos and now marching with us ain't good enough, because we've done that. We have t-shirts. We have our own marches. We can do our own rallies, and we can make our own videos. Put your money where your mouth is. Can I tell you that for everything that the power from the elite of this nation has done to black people, there's a price that must be paid that standing in solidarity can't pay. All right, I'm going to give it to you. Dr. King said it this way. This is the reason why he was assassinated. This is when they said that King didn't die because he dreamed. Ma, he died because he woke up. He was killed because he began to go towards the pocketbook of America. The March on Washington, cool. Ending segregation, cool. Getting the Civil Rights Bill passed, cool. Integration of schools and lunch counters, fine. But when he started to say, you know what, I'm working on a new campaign called the Poor People's Campaign. That now America now has to put an amount in black communities to rebuild the infrastructure of what they've done to the community. Because he said it's easy to integrate lunch counters. But if a man can't afford to buy something at the lunch counter, that's still an injustice. He said that it's one thing to tell the black man to pull himself up by his bootstraps, but you haven't even given him boots to pull up with. This economic justice is that Dr. King, towards his latter years of his life, that he knew he signed the death warrant. Because remember, he said that he would love to live a long life. He said he never wanted to be a martyr of the movement. King never wanted to die early. He said he wanted to live long. But he knew his life was sealed with martyr because he began to go after the finances of this country and challenge them economically. This economic justice, he says, this America's opportunity in 1968, a week before he was assassinated, March 31st, 1968, he was killed April 4th, a few days before. He says, this is America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. The question is not if America can do it. He says, is if America will do it. He says, there's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. Because the real question is whether we have the will. That was March 31st, 68. He was killed April 4th, 68. Can I tell you that it's time that we put our money where our mouth is? But somebody say, well, how does this relate? Preacher, how can you push this rhetoric? What scripture can you use? Go with me to James chapter 2. James, the half-brother of Jesus, a martyr himself who was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple. He began to write to this church that was experiencing their own social injustices because Roman government was oppressing them. You had Roman soldiers in the temple and the synagogues. You had people, he seen deacons and apostles killed and martyred. He was a disciple. Now, the brother of Jesus, he's getting ready to be martyred and killed himself. And now he's telling the church that they still should put their faith into action. He says in one chapter of James, be doers of the word, not hearers only. But in James 2 is where we get our text. Go with me to verse 14. He says, what does it profit, brethren? If someone says they have faith, but does not have works, can faith save him? He says, here it is, where we get our text, verse 15, New King James Version. If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and only thing you say to him is depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. What's the use, America, saying we stand in solidarity, but you haven't put no works behind it? Look at our community. Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the world. You got HBCUs closing while prisons are being filled. The privatized prison system receiving billions of dollars, while black schools don't even have laptops to pass to their kids. You got people in prison eating better lunch than your kid in 3rd grade. This is a money game. Can I preach to you and tell you, America, the only way you can rectify this is put your money where your mouth is. Chicago, stop rebuilding downtown. While our south and west sides look like third world countries. We see no economic development. People know us for our mag mouth, our Ferris wheels, our stadiums and games, our bars and clubs and music districts. Hell, some of us from Chicago go downtown and get a vacation from the city we live in. That goes to show how segregated that goes to show how separated our city is. Y'all knew it was coming. You knew who was preaching today. That we have to learn that if we do not put investment, I'm moving ahead about what we're doing, then we're never going to be what God wants us to be. That's for as a nation and a church. But how can we do it? Let me give you these, and I'm done. Here it is. Firstly, it requires universal incorporation. Verse 14. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? The question is, can faith save him? Can I tell you that this is not something that we just demand, but this is something that we must demonstrate. The works in us need to be proved, but it requires universal incorporation. The same way that we demand that they invest in us, we have to ensure that they actually demonstrate it. Can I tell you that we must designate our attention to be incorporated with universalism, that they don't leave us out? And can I tell you that we have to learn to stop being happy because we get in the room? We got to learn to demand that we be universally incorporated into what's going on, because we built the very table you're sitting at. If you're willing to prosper on our backs and our oppression, then it's just fair for us to be incorporated. But the good part is, we've seen a lot of people in this country, white Americans and privileged black people, saying that I've been learning and I've been listening. So while you learning and listening, that ain't good enough. Because the same way you've been learning and listening, we've been dying and struggling. When are we going to decide that we need to incorporate universally what we're going on? If true investment is going to take place, it must require universal incorporation. Secondly, don't miss this, if America going to put his money where his mouth is, it must require universal incorporation. But secondly, it must require unilateral investment. I'm almost done. Don't miss this. There's a lot of meat on this bone. I'm almost there. It requires unilateral investment, not bilateral. Here it is. Bilateral investment means that both parties have to mutually meet and give. Unilateral, you and I, means one, which means it requires one person, one side to give. This is not a bilateral issue. No, this is a unilateral issue, because black people is not the one that start killing themselves. You started racism, so you have to end it. You started the oppression, so you have to end it. Y'all say, what can we do? I know what you can do. Pay black people back for what you've done to them. We can pass all these other bills, but the reparation bill don't come on the table. It requires a unilateral investment. This is not on the black community to teach other communities about our oppression. Black people, stop arguing with people about your blackness. Can I tell you, church, your pastor talking. Stop trying to explain to other people about what you've been through. If they don't know by now what we've been through, they just don't want to know, and they are denying it. It is not your obligation to teach people about their ignorance. It ain't your job. You got to go learn. This is a unilateral investment. It's not bilateral. The oppressor is the one that needs to invest change, not the oppressed. That's like you breaking something and giving the broken the responsibility to fix themselves. You can't do it. It requires a unilateral investment. The source of power must enact change. The affected cannot fix itself. And that's what we have seen with our black communities. That's why you got black on black crime. Let them fix their own problem. How? When you're the one that put guns and drugs in our community in the first place. How can we fix what's going on? If we would have done it, we would have been done it by now. It requires a unilateral investment. When you can find $90 billion to give to Russia for a spaceship, while our schools and businesses and stores in our own communities is jacked. When you could just find money for stimulus. I thought we didn't have none. Where it come from? It requires a unilateral investment. America, you are the source of power, so you are the one that have to enact the change. That's just like the one that is offended. Since you are the one that did the offending, you the one that got to apologize. But guess what? I can forgive you even though you ain't apologized, but it's still up to you to enact that change. It requires a unilateral investment. A unilateral investment. The affected cannot fix itself. So, if we're going to put our money where our mouth is, church, you could take this for our own notes. Universal incorporation, unilateral investment, but then lastly, unilateral investment, but then lastly, it requires undeniable initiative. Look at verse 17. It says, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. You must have undeniable initiative. We cannot deny that we don't need to act. And that's not just for this nation. That's for the church. Here's why I bring it. We can't act like the church don't need to be fixed. The same way I'm telling America, put your money where your mouth is. Now your pastor talking. PTC, put your money where your mouth is. Let's keep shouting and dancing now. Let's keep our hallelujahs and our dance now. When are we going to accept the fact that we need to act? This country knows what's going on. The same way for the nation, it requires our church and our personal lives. We must enact that we cannot wait to do something. That's in our everyday life as well. You are responsible for taking initiative. America, talking is not good enough. Stating your stance isn't good enough. Saying you are in solidarity isn't good enough. Because if there is no sign of the relinquishing of power and the privilege that you have, then it's just all talk. It's funny, even here in the church and in our local lives, people say they want to change but don't want to give up their spot. Because you ain't relinquished your privilege and your power. So how bad do you really want to initiate? Can I tell you, and I'm done, we are the result of what has been invested in us. Socially, personally, and corporately. It's time to prioritize our investment. Because can I tell you, as a country, you can put it in any aspect, even as a local church, don't you know that we are the results of the investment of greed, hate, superiority? But if we change our investment to equality, equity, provision, innovation, and change, watch what happens. People have been talking about this week about defunding the police. Are you with it? Yes. But I'm with it that we need to prioritize our funding. Because in this city that you and I are in, Chicago, 40% of the city's budget is towards police. 40. That's almost half of the city's budget going towards law enforcement. God bless my friends and family members as a part of law enforcement. But can I tell you, whatever you put your investment in, we have been over-policed. We have over-invest. Okay, I'll give it this way. One of my sisters, Erica Netton, she probably watching, on the movement, she said on Facebook, her Facebook post, I copied and pasted you, in case you didn't know. Look at this. She said, what if when you call 911, you get a social worker instead of somebody with a gun? She said, what if you call 911, you get a drug counselor instead of somebody with a gun? What if you call 911, you get an emergency housing specialist instead of somebody with a gun? She said, what if everything we've thought about policing is wrong? Just what if? What if it's time for a shift in how we do things? All right, Ice Cube tweeted. He said, the high cost of racism, blacks in America should be exempt from paying taxes because we're the ones that built this, because our bill is paid now. He said this would be help to start repairing the damage that has been done. All right, you don't believe me? Jesus said it this way, since y'all don't want to listen to Ice Cube or my friend on Facebook. Jesus said, Matthew 6, verse 21, for where your treasure is. Come talk to him. He said, for where your treasure is, your heart. So if our heart is on policing and militarism and commercialism and elitism and power, if that's what we put our money behind, that's what we get. But just imagine if we put our money towards economic development, schools, colleges, our kids, nonprofits, businesses, small businesses. There's no way that Ruth Chris should have got the small business loan. Some corporations gave their money back. Well, I know small business owners that has been denied it. America, put your money where your mouth is. That requires submission, selflessness, and sacrifice. Because either way, I preached it before. PTC, you remember a few months ago I preached, you get what you pay for. Come in. Jesus said this way again. I got behind book. He says, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him. You get what you pay for, preacher. He said what comes out of you. So if you're putting in greed, if you're putting in hate, this is why I would tune up, but I got to talk to you. If you're putting in malice, if you're putting in jealousy, if you're putting in division, if you're putting in your selfishness, what you think gonna come out? But come here, Paul, Galatians. If you put in the fruits of the Spirit, your love, your joy, your peace, your long-suffering, your patientness, if you put that stuff in you, watch what comes out. America, it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is. Church, put your money where your mouth is. That's why we ask for tithe and offering, because we need the money to build the church so the community can be coming here as a space where we can be a centralized location. That's why we ask for it. Put your money where your mouth, because I'm about to ask for it in a few minutes, because you got to understand you need it to survive. You can't say you with something if you haven't invested in it. And can I tell you, if you want to know where your heart is, check your bank account. Don't tell me you love me. Let me see your bank app. I know where your heart is. I know. And some of us is having a hard time not going to Starbucks the last few days because that's where your heart is. Some of us have a hard time about us giving up what we need to give up because it requires money. But can I tell you what made the Montgomery boycott so effective? It was not because they stopped riding buses, but the whole point was to hit the city where it hurt, in its pockets. Because if we stop riding the buses, then the city won't generate revenue and they will have to hear us. You got to make them hear you. And it's not just with marching and rallying. Hit their pocketbooks. That's why Starbucks apologized so fast, because they knew what was coming in the next 72 hours. They knew the strike that was coming. They knew the economic development that was about, the detriment that was about to hit them, because it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is. If you really care about the black community, put your money towards the HBCUs, put it back in the public school system, give these young black business owners them loans, help these communities rebuild our schools, rebuild our streets, stop letting our community look like third world countries. America, put your money where your mouth is. I'm done. And if we're going to sustain as a church, we got to do the same. Put your money where your mouth is. You can't say you with the ministry. And we look at it and like, no, is they really with us? Think about it. People get quiet when we talk about money. I'm through. But when we talk about giving, it requires us to understand that we have to put our money where our mouth is. Where your treasure is, your heart be also. James said, it makes no sense to see somebody hungry and naked, and all you say to them is that, I pray that you be fed in Jesus' name. And start dancing. I declare that clothes get on your back. Come on, let's dance for clothes. Let's take 60 seconds that food be in your refrigerator. But James said you haven't actually done it. It makes no sense for you to tell somebody in James, you see somebody hungry and naked, and all you say to them, be clothed and be fed in Jesus' name. But you haven't actually given them nothing. You haven't invested in them. Can I ask this country, this church, this community a question? Even us as a people, what are we investing in? Because even us as a people, we have enough resources and funds where we can fund our own if we sacrifice and prioritize where we give our resources. Put your money where your mouth is. So the privileged, the powerful, the elite, what can we do? I know what you can do. Grab your checkbook. Because there are many grassroots organizations. There are local churches. There are schools, businesses that would love to receive an extra push to keep going because they're in the neighborhood, in the community that's trying to already solve these problems. America, put your money where your mouth is. God bless you. That's my time.